Whether you're just starting out or scaling your security program, building trust and demonstrating strong security practices is more important than ever. Banter automates compliance for ISO 27001, SOC 2 and more, saving you time, money and effort while strengthening customer trust. Plus, with automated security questionnaires and a customer-facing trust center, you can streamline security reviews and showcase your IT infrastructure security. Over 9,000 global companies, including Atlassian, Flow Health, and Quora, already trust Vanta to manage risk and prove security in real time. Get an exclusive $1,000 discount now at vanta.com/startupradio.
Welcome to Startuprad.io, your podcast and YouTube blog covering the German startup scene with news, interviews, and live events.
Hello and welcome everybody. This is Joe from Startuprad.io, your startup podcast, YouTube blog, and internet radio station from Germany. Today I bring you the second interview with Carsten, the current business angel of the year for Germany. Hey Carsten, how you doing?
Yes, I'm fine here in Zanzibar at the moment. I'm on holiday still.
Yes, we do have a little game going on if you break into sweats before the end of the interview, because you had to turn off the air condition
Yes.
for this interview. So it'll be interesting. We may tell our audience that you're the business angel of the year, selected by BANT, the German Business Angel Association. And they're usually elected, I do believe, in October and November. And the special thing about it is that they are awarded on the recommendation of the startups you invest in.
Yes, and also the Minister of Economy of Germany is head of the jury.
Ah, I see.
Okay.
which will be subject to change soon.
Yes.
Okay, I see. We already talked about in the other interview that you're a serial entrepreneur yourself, that you currently run Casablanca.ai, which everybody who's watching this can see how this is working here. And I want to get straight into your investment philosophy and startup selection, because you told me when we talked about this, you get up to 10 pitches a week. How do you cut through the noise and identify opportunities?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and it's not so easy because, of course, you always fear missing the one hidden gem that becomes the next Facebook or Microsoft or OpenAI or whatever. So what do we do? We have own AI that filters through the pitch decks and takes out some red flags. So at least annotate some red flags so that we easily identify this without going through the 45 pages of some pitch decks. So there are some things in there like nobody has had any experience in sales before, or they are emphasizing technology, but they don't have patents and it seems that it's not patentable. So there are some things where we say it's probably not interesting to take any deeper look at the startup. So this is just the first filter. It tells about half of the teams that probably they're not so interesting. So depending on the time my people have, so I have 1.5 people on the investment side, Roxanne and Christoph, and so they take a deeper look only at those which were not red flagged by the AI. So the AI just principally takes the pitch deck and goes through some analysis. Also puts a lot of information into a kind of a database, so that we can later on analyze all the startups. And so if we miss something which turns out to be very good, we learn for the next time. So after 2 years or so, when the startup turns out to be a high flyer.
I see. I'm wondering, since when do you start utilizing AI in this way?
Summer last year, I think. So we started programming something in, I think, April or so, and it worked then in summer. And we want to do more, but right now I have more other projects. So I didn't program it, but I gave the idea what to do to somebody in my team, and not in the investment team, somewhere else in my company, in my company group, and they just programmed this.
Mm-hmm. I see.
So, but it's mainly an LLM that does the analysis, but you have to do some things around. So to convert the PDF, to set up the database and those things.
Mm-hmm. You focus more on a startup's technology than its founding team. Why? And have you ever been wrong with this approach? I personally believe a lot of people are saying they're just focusing on the team because they want to see consultancy A, B, or C, or university C, D, and E. That's basically when they get interested in invest or worked at a startup A to Z.
Right. So when they focus on technology, it normally means that they look if one of the founders was working at one of the Batman is, I think, the new thing. So so the Magnificent Eight, and if one of them worked as a software developer there, then probably the program is technically good, or the startup is technically well set up. That's what most investors estimate. The thing is that most investors come from a financial background and not from a tech background, so it's much easier for them to analyze financials or teams, and take a look at the founders, rather than really telling if this technology is a game changer, is really something that is really ahead of the competition, or if it's just another startup doing something with a very good idea, but not with great tech in the background. And I'm one of the few ones who are coming from tech and can thus tell something about this part. So I think this is probably one of my USPs here, that I can take a deeper look into technology. Of course, my team first analyzes just these standard questions like, is the team good? Is the plan good? Is the market big enough? So generally we say we invest in a total addressable market over 1 billion. So if it's only 100 million, normally we just don't take a closer look. That's one of the things that our AI also tries to find out. And that's something that the AI and the team already challenge. And then when I talk with the founders, I'm also talking about technology. Of course, if the founding team would be like not somebody I would like to work with, then we would also not invest. And of course, technology is not everything. But then it's not that you have to get every good deal. Just you have to make sure that many of the deals you get are good. But yeah, so you will always miss out on some deals. So I had an opportunity to invest very, very early in a startup started by two pupils. They were below 18 years old. And they were starting the company when they became 18, but they were preparing for it. And I said, you need two pivots, one technically and one. The idea is great, but technically and also from the business model, both will not work. and so.
How did they react, given that they're not very old?
No, the thing is, I said I'm still investing. But on the they offered me a low valuation basis, and I said I'm going through this with you, and I think you will do fine, because the technical guy was very open to learning, and he was already quite great, but just some things he wanted to do would not work, and from the business model it would also not work. I calculated this in Excel. But the CEO also had he was very far for a 17-year-old. So I thought I invest. And then the problem was that we had an appointment at the notary, and that was in Stuttgart. And I had an appointment in the evening with a politician in Berlin, a member of the parliament. And the notary called and said, we need to shift this by 1 hour. Because my previous case takes longer. And I said, then I cannot get my flight and I cannot go on the meeting with the politician. So I will have to cancel today. Let's find another appointment next week. And we didn't find it next week. We didn't find it the week after. And after about 4 weeks, they came back to me. We had an appointment in 4 weeks or so, but they said now our valuation is more than twice what we had before, because we have found some other investors who wanted to invest. And then I said, for 2 pivots, I'm not going to do it. Not going to do it at that valuation. We still discussed a bit, but did not agree. And what happened is they started this, and they did the first pivot very soon, and then they got, I think, 2 million on a 10 million basis after less than 6 months. So, that was quite a lot already, because we were far lower in our valuation before. And I'm not so sure how much they financed. I think they have taken up something like 20 million already or so, and are doing very well. So I did wrong there, because I thought with the 2 pivots necessary, the new valuation is not appropriate, because the risk is still high. 2 pivots necessary, and the valuation is not ultra low as it was before, just not very high yet. I was definitely wrong there. The other thing is, yes, I sometimes make mistakes in investing, of course, and that happens to everyone. And there can be 2 sides of mistakes. So one is you have missed a good chance, and the other thing is you invest in a company where it doesn't pay off and the company does not do well. And I also had this in the past. I invested in a company that just didn't want to grow. They were happy after they were slightly profitable, and still at a very low level. Yes, we can run the company now. We don't need any more investors. So what's the problem? And that's also not so good. So even if the company doesn't go broke, it might still by far not pay off for the investor.
Talking about investor approach here, what is for you a hard no or a red flag when you evaluating a startup pitch?
So one is, if I can't work with the company, that's a hard no. Also, if sometimes they think they have invented something totally new, and I find out that what the company invented is already there or very easy to reproduce, and you can't get a patent for it. So that's normally a red flag for me. So, for example, I had somebody with an invention in chemistry, and they would not tell me what it actually was. So they had a discovery in chemistry. That's what they told me. When they finally told me, after I signed a hard NDA and lots of things, I found out in less than 5 minutes that the effect was already known, but under a different name with a slightly different approach, but it didn't make any difference. So it was definitely existing. So that's a very hard no. So what else is a hard no? So I'm not so much on this single founder doesn't work. So single founder can work well. I don't have a big problem with that. I know it for myself. So I started multiple companies normally as a single founder in the beginning, and then took up some people later. But FactFinder, I actually grew to 100 people without any co-founder. So, and then I hired a COO in order to just get me a bit away from management and let me go back to innovation again. Because I don't like management. So, and this guy really loved management. He was in a 10 times larger company before as C-level, and joined us and just restructured, reorganized how we worked in terms of how we managed the company.
Mm-hmm. When we talked before, you told me you have currently a portfolio of 15 investments. First, my personal understanding is that this is usually a big portfolio for German business angels, right?
Yeah, for business angels, yes. So there are some people. I have founded also the Frequent Angel Circle, which is a sub circle or subgroup in Band in the German Business Angel Network Deutschland. And we accept people who have done 10 invests in their past. So you don't need to hold 10 invests now. Even if you have only one or two or so right now, and you have already exited, or some have gone broke or so, and you have done 10 investments in the past, you can join. Very, very few members of Bund have had 10 investments. So I don't know how many there are in the Business Angel Network Deutschland who could qualify, but it's probably 100 or not so much more, and 34 are in our frequent angel circle. Actually, the one with the most investments has done more than 100 investments. We already have one with 75, who was also nominated for Business Angel of the Year. And we have one more with more than 50 investments. And all of those investments, so we're talking about investments of 50K euros and up. We're not talking about people who are just by a business angel club or so, diversify their money and invest 10,000 euros each in 50 startups. So it's and we have one who has done also about 20 investments, but his typical investment is 1 million. So he doesn't start with 1 million. He normally starts with 250K. But over time he grows in the companies, and sometimes he also starts with 1 million. So there are these people. So in the frequent angel circle, I'm rather one of the smaller investors. But as compared to the typical business angel, I would say, yes, this is quite a portfolio. So I've done 21 investments, 15 are still active.
Still active, exactly. And I was wondering, which one are you most excited about right now and why?
There's actually quite a number of really interesting investments. So I'm very positive for Valent. That's a London investment I made. So outside Germany in the UK, Valent, VALENT. They detect social media attacks. So sometimes a company has negative social media, and that's okay if it's natural. But sometimes a competitor actively attacks a company on social media, or it also happens in politics. Valent has a number of customers who are big and who have been who were under social media attack from competitors or political opposing people. So that means normally there is some truth in the story. So something has gone wrong with something. So like disappointed one customer or so, and an attack normally means that somebody takes this story and makes it huge as opposed to the positive stories. And this happens. This is not just something that could happen, but it does happen. There are malevolent people who actively attack their competitors in social media. And Valent detects this with AI, and they're very strong. They have a very strong AI team. I can tell this.
Actually, when one startup starts to attack another one on social media, I would be wondering, don't you have anything else to do?
Yes, so there are a number of countermeasures you can do. And that's a project that Valent then can do. That cannot be done automatically yet. So some things are legal. So you can, if you find out, if the first thing is you try to find out who is behind it. But if they're really good, they somehow hide it behind a Russian group or something. So, but sometimes they can find out who is attacking or who is behind it. And then there are other measures like how do you work with the press, because normally then the press takes up this, and you have to do some countermeasures there. And how do you deal with the social media and so on? I'm not an expert for that, so you have to interview Valent the next time in order to talk about this topic. So, but I think it's a great company, and a former investigative BBC journalist is part of the founding team. But they're also really great in AI. So I admire what they do. So that's one of the startups. I can tell about more if you want to talk about more startups. But
I do have still a lot of questions for you, and we're already running 20 minutes of recording.
okay.
So, yeah, and keep in mind the AC is not running right now. I was wondering, what one startup investment that can you name one that completely surprised you with how fast they scaled?
I have one where I was wondering how I was astonished how quickly everything went well. I have one startup. I cannot name it if I tell more about it because we are under a not too hard but still under NDA with the buyer. So, but I invested in a hardware company which had a lot of innovation, and I was fascinated by the innovation. And the hardware company was they showed me their very first prototype of one part of the hardware they were building. And what happened was they took in investors. They tried to bootstrap and then found out that it will not be sufficient. They had some money, but not enough. Then they took in investors, and I was one of the people that they asked because of AI, because they thought AI will play a big role also in their future product. And so they had the very, very first prototype of something where you need hundreds of thousands of in big companies. And it did not work standalone. You needed some other components also, and they just had this one thing. But I was fascinated by the height of the innovation they built. Then it took only 18 months until they sold to a big company. They were still like, I don't know, minimum 1.5 years pre-seed, so pre-revenue. So definitely what they had built then was a fully working prototype, but in a very small scale. So like when you say I'm automating, let's say a car manufacturing factory, and you just demonstrate one robot which screws in the screws or something at one place. That's so they could show a smaller part of everything, but you could see that this is going to change the world in this special aspect. And then they already sold. So that went very fast, and it was still far beyond before they could sell the product to any customer. And we thought that in the current situation, we thought that we have to have the first customer, and we tried to get some customer who sign LOI or so, which was also very difficult in the current situation. But actually, they had some inquiries from big companies who wanted to invest in them or rather buy them, and we went fast with one of them. And so after only 18 months, I could sell my shares again, and was very happy with the multiple I got.
Mm-hmm. You learned a lot when you do so many startup investments. I was wondering, what was one of the counterintuitive lessons you learned? You said you still open to invest in single founder companies and not teams. What else did you learn?
Oh, that's a difficult question. So maybe you have to skip that if something was counterintuitive and I still had a gut feeling. You mean kind of, right? So it's not like normally you do this, but in this case I'm going for it. So, but nothing comes to my mind at this moment. Sorry. So for counterintuitive investment. Or counter rules investment. So, I mean, normally what I said about this. So, what I said about this hardware company right now was also normally when you invest in hardware, you think it takes 10 years until you have an exit, and in this case, it was not necessary because it was so clear that this is very disruptive for the industry, and they were so far ahead of anybody in this field.
I see. When I talk to many successful investors, they do have personal investment thesis or rules. Do you follow some of them? Do you have some and you follow them before making a deal?
So we have a list of a few things we check, but these are the things that Roxanne checks when she talks, or some the AI checks, some Roxanne checks, and so the general thing is that we are always ready to learn and maybe still invest if something is not according to our list. But if some other parts are overwhelmingly good. So in general, for example, we invest pre-seed. So that means if the company is already running and just wants to grow, normally we don't invest. Still, I did this once. So I invested in a company called Hybrid LiDAR, so they're not really running, but they have first customers who have done test runs with them and paid for that and so on. But this is already quite a big company. But I thought this innovation is also very high, so I invested also. They do a new type of LiDAR of the distance measuring, which is used for self-driving cars, except by Tesla, who is only using cameras. But it's also a great application for manufacturing and robots and everything. And they have a much higher resolution at a less costly LiDAR device. And they're currently going to the first prototype. So not prototype, the first production run. So for the first customer. They're preparing for that right now. But they're already quite big. So normally I don't invest on valuations over 5 million.
Every investor is currently getting giddy when they hear AI, which was in the past something like blockchain, quick delivery, and so on and so forth. Except for those current technologies, if you could only invest in one emerging technologies in the next 5 years, what would it be?
So half a year ago, I would have said deep reinforcement learning. So that's one part of AI, but it's AI that was underestimated for a long time. In my prediction in the beginning of 24, I said deep reinforcement learning, will do a lot in the coming year in 24, and actually it only did now with DeepSeek. Everybody could see that deep reinforcement learning is still a very important factor, because this was basically the foundation of why they could be much faster and much better than other approaches in the past. So it's a combination of this transformer technology of LLMs with this deep reinforcement learning. So there was some deep RL also in the previous LLMs, but it had only a minor role, and now it became part of the core of the innovation of DeepSeek. So that's what I've said then. And right now, I think it's what is totally underestimated is robots, even though they already have some hype. But I think people cannot see how big the disruption will be in 5 years.
I actually talked to Jan Lippert, another interview that we just published. He is Frankfurt born, even though he was raised in the US. He is working currently on a company that combines robotics with large language models, which is also pretty interesting. And it's something I haven't heard a lot about before.
So definitely you need to combine them if you want to have practical applications in smaller scale companies. So in bigger scale companies, when you need like 200 robots doing the same thing in a factory or so, you can train the robots by other measures. But if you want them to just take over any kind of small job that help you, you need to also be able to give them commands in natural language, like when you have them, let's say, at a building site, and it's a helper for the mason. So then you want to tell them, like, just hand me over 5 more of those stones, hand me over this tool, and so on. Can you just go downstairs and carry up 2 more sacks of the cement or something? Yes. And you want to command them in that way, and you don't want to show them every step which is the normal way of learning for the new robots. So they observe and they copy, but also for their internal reasoning, for understanding what you're doing. I think they're also using maybe not large language models, but the same kind of foundation models with some transformers inside or so who do represent what the person is doing. So it can reason what is it that is doing, because you don't go like, okay, now the hand moves 20 centimeters in that direction, then the fingers grab. Rather, you want to do something like he's grabbing the tool, he's taking the tool, putting it to the screw, turning the tool. So you want it to understand what is happening, and for that it already needs some knowledge representation internally, and that's easier with language, as it seems, than with most other things.
I was smiling when he started to kind of combine this robots with learning with what came to mind are the apprenticeship models, because if you're an apprentice in Germany, they will play some practical jokes on you in the start. I also was a victim of that, and I was wondering what jokes the people will play with the robots.
On robots, yes, certainly they will. People will want to play tricks on the robots and then laugh at them.
Yeah, I see. I'm getting a little bit more on the bird's eye view. What do you think is the biggest advantage that European startup founders have over Silicon Valley entrepreneurs?
So you mean the founders in Germany, or the small investors in Germany, the business angels?
I would rather go for the founders, because if they do have advantages, also the investors who invest in them have advantages, right?
Mm. So I cannot tell exactly about the US scenery, but what I would say is that probably the founders in the US will get money more easily, but then they have to deliver more on KPIs more quickly. Mm-hmm. And when you're in Europe, probably founders who have more of a longer time until they will reach results probably have a bigger chance of doing this with German investors and European investors, so business angels especially, than in the US, I think, because we're not so hard results driven as most of the US investors I've talked to so far. But there might be others also in the US. So maybe some more disruptive innovations which take a bit longer can emerge in Europe more easily, because the founders will not have so much pressure to get results quickly.
Mm-hmm. I see. Before we go into a very small ad break, I was wondering, how do you manage to run Casablanca plus all the companies, all the startup investments you have?
The secret is people. So you have to have the right team. You have to have the right people, and I'm very happy about my PA Wenke. Also very happy about the other people in the team who actually manage a lot on their own, and I don't have to say okay to everything before they do it. They just do it and ask for forgiveness rather than for permission before. And normally everything's right. And of course, in Casablanca, I have a COO who runs the daily business, and he's also an experienced entrepreneur. So this is his third company. He was also at Accenture, and so it's Markus Vollmer. He also was a CEO of some other German smaller companies, which were not startups. So he knows how normal business runs, and so I have a very experienced person at my side, and he's running everything in sales and normal daily business in Casablanca. And the same is true for Omicron Data Solutions. I have Albert there, who's also very experienced and a great operative Geschäftsführer.
CEO. Okay. We'll be back after a small ad break. Thank you for staying with us, guys. We're talking with Carsten Kraus, Business Angel of the Year 2024, current Business Angel, because the award ceremony takes only place in late fall. So he's the current Business Angel. Talking about this, winning Business Angel of the Year 2024 is a huge honor. What does this award mean to you?
I was quite astonished when I finally got it. So in the beginning, I thought, yes, I'm doing very well and probably I have a good chance. So like 30% or so. And then I saw who got into the short list. And out of, I think 83, they selected 7. I was one of them. And the others were so great. So one of them had 75 investments and so on. And then I thought my chances are like below 10% to get elected. And when they finally, I didn't hear anything before. It was on the event, and when they finally called my name, I was really so shocked and astonished, and so it somehow resonated with me so deeply. Wow, I got this with these great people around me. So so I felt very, very happy. And now, what does it mean? So for one thing, it means that we get even more startup inquiries, of course. And not all of them have really read what I do. So I'm focusing on AI, I'm focusing on technology. And some people just say I'm addressing the Business Angel of the Year. And I don't care what he does. I just send out my pitch deck and so on. So some of them do their research quite well before they address me, but some don't. So that's one thing. Then there was some interest from Formats Press podcast. I think you also came through Band Network. But actually, because I'm a well-known AI expert in Germany already, I was in the press anyway, so it's nothing new that suddenly erupted, and I was not prepared to give interviews or so. So I was in Süddeutsche Zeitung, FAZ, many other formats, 4 times on TV last year for AI topics, and so in general, it was not a new thing for me to get press inquiries, but suddenly from a new side, because before people did not interview me on the topic of investment, but rather on the topic of what is AI going to change in our world.
I've read through why, by the way, we need to point out again that you get only into the group to be nominated as Business Angel of the Year because the startups you are investing in recommend you.
Yes. Yes.
And you got the award. You were recognized for, I quote, building bridges between startups. What is your approach of network and collaboration there?
Yeah, so I mean, as a business angel, what can I do for the startups? So I can give them money, yes, but money is not everything a startup needs. Very often they also need advice. But also, I think interchanging ideas between startups and good practices between the startups and so on, that's also very helpful. And we do this actively. So we meet with startups online, we bring them together. So we also have done some forms like do AI together, exchange your knowledge on AI, exchange your experience, maybe also exchange some code and some other things together. And also we have a format called the Startup Future Days, which takes place once a year in summer. And we invite all startups, so we pay the general hospitality except for their own travel, and so we hire the conference room and pay all that, and invite some guests and so on. And so we bring all the startups together, the C-level, and we start with a barcamp format. So that means people can spontaneously say, I could tell something on this best practice I have, or I want to discuss with other people on the topic of how to get good talents or on whatever. So many typical startup things. And the second day we have prepared workshops. So somebody from the startups prepares a workshop, which is then going on for 4 hours. And because that's prepared, there's a lot of theoretical knowledge and so on they can convey, or they have prepared practice. So you have to do something, some tasks you have to work on your own to do something and so on. And my startups actually value this very, very positively every time we do it. And I have not heard of any other business angel who does this. It's quite an investment, also in time, not only in money. And but I think this is something that really brings the startups forward.
Mm-hmm. Talking about bringing the startups forward, you often help startups to optimize their AI models. I was wondering, how hands-on are you? Are you sitting in front of the desk together with one of the senior developers and say, do it like this, do it like this, like on the vertical screens? Black background. That's what I had in mind there.
So the last time I programmed myself is about 5 years ago, before the pandemic. So I'm not as practical as you now described, but I last year I actually went into some details, and we built a good a new kind of loss function for one of the models, and I was deeply involved in that, and I think. So, I mean, this sounds like a bit bragging, but I'm quite sure it would not have worked by far as well as when I joined and helped them improve that. So sometimes I go deep.
Yeah.
Sometimes I do go deep. I normally don't. I have not coded for a few years.
Mm-hmm. It ain't bragging if it's true. You are an AI specialist, so I was curious, how will AI impact startup investing in the next 5 to 10 years? Will AI start picking winning startups? And will this be a reinforcing circle?
Yes, it definitely will. So already right now, a lot of professional investors, so funds who invest with other people's money, are already using AI tools to scan the market, to discover potential startups for their deal flow, so that they don't have to wait for the startup applying, but rather can go actively and tell them, oh, we're interested in investing, so please tell us more. And this is already happening right now. Also for selecting out of the deal flow coming in who is interesting and who is not so interesting, I'm not the only one who has built own AI for that. As far as I know, there are no tools who do everything yet. There are some tools who we have taken a closer look at the Frequent Angel Circle in Band. We've taken a closer look at some tools who promise to help you invest better and select the good ones from the bad ones. But the tools were actually producing a lot of paper or non-physical paper, long PDFs with so many research items, and did not really help invest, rather help justify investments once you had decided. Because if some investor, an LP in a fund, asks you, why did you invest there? Then you can send them the 75-page rationale in the PDF, and the LP will probably not go through all the details.
I'm very confident he will have an AI to give him 5 bullet points out of that.
So definitely we will do it better. So with the things we are doing, or we are already doing it better, because our AI helps us decide. And some other investors have also built their own tools to help them decide, rather than produce a lot of PDF paper.
What is one area of the German startup ecosystem that needs some major change to stay competitive globally?
So there are several things which need to change in Europe. So for one thing, the AI Act has to be reduced. And currently, I'm not so confident that this is going to happen, because it's not because of the startups, because startups can adapt to bad conditions as well as to good conditions. The problem is that if people are afraid of using AI because they might violate the AI Act and might get punished, and I see this a lot in the Mittelstand, so the mid-sized German companies, which are very important in Germany, that they are very insecure what they are allowed to use and what they're not allowed to use. So the market breaks away. People are reluctant to use AI. They are afraid to use AI, partly because of this AI Act, partly also because they don't understand it. But even if you get them educated, the AI Act still is not precise and very difficult, and is subject to be extended very easily. And we need to get rid of this threat of this. We call it Damocles sword, so the sword that's above the head. So. In order to also get the market better in Europe for buying AI tools.
Mm-hmm. Given the current political situation that we are likely to see a new government in pretty soon, what role do government policies play in making Germany more or less attractive for startups?
I think it does play a big role for several reasons, actually. I'm not so much a friend of a state financing everything, but if you hinder it by the state, that also does not stand for a good ecosystem. So in Germany, we need to get down with a lot of bureaucracy. And when I started my first company, I think I remember that we had to do the VAT only once per year. And now, as a new founded startup, you have to do it every month. You have to do the VAT calculation and the VAT tax review and so on. So that has had to be done for some fraud also that had happened. So it would be much better if, like, when you just declare that you are still negative, so you're not making money or so, then you maybe can just omit all the tax things. So you just say, I declare I vow. So if you could just say, I vow that we have no profits or even we have no revenues, then you can just omit everything in the tax regulations. That would take a lot of pressure from new startups. So starting from the beginning, because in the first time for Casablanca, it has taken like 4 years until we had the first revenues, and we're far away from profits right now. Of course, this is an exponential curve. So I hope that soon we will be very profitable. But for the first years, we had to develop, and then we also had a lot of paperwork to do, and that's not so nice. You want to focus on your innovation. You don't want to focus on paperwork. So and Germany is very difficult. So when you start a company, it takes like 6 weeks until you can start the company officially. So a limited company. And I think politics can do a lot of good for the startup ecosystem by just reducing all these obstacles.
Mm-hmm. They can. I like to have you as a guest because you're known for making bold predictions. What's one thing about the startup world in 2030 that only a few people are seeing coming?
Yes, the startup world in 2030. So I think what few people see coming is that probably the economy will change a lot until 2030. So I fear that the German car industry will go down by 50% until then. So I hope that I'm completely wrong, but it might happen. And the car industry is so central for Germany. So what will happen is that we have many people who are unemployed at that time. And if we continue to just say, okay, if you're unemployed, the state will care for everything, then we will not get power into the startup ecosystem. But if the state rules change, and you really, for one thing, empower the people to start a company. On the other hand, also drive them to take up either work or start a company. And maybe we will have a lot more founders because they're very talented engineers and other people who will suddenly be out of business in their big companies. And I have seen an engineer of 48 or so leave his company and start a new manufacturing company for glasses. So he had some idea on how to improve that. He was in that industry before, and he's quite successful with that. And also the startup I told you about before, where I had the exit within 18 months, was also founded by two people who were at the end of their 50s. So now they're both over 60. And who had left their traditional careers actually a few years ago, built another startup, and then started this one. So it's not that startups can only be started by 18-year-olds or 25-year-olds who just left university or so. That's not necessary. Also, older people can be very innovative and very inventive, and we will get all this knowledge from the engineers coming into the startup world in a few years.
I've once heard that statistically speaking, the most successful entrepreneurs found the company with 45. But by the way, what came to me, most people listening to this already speak German. They speak 3 to 4 languages. But for everybody who wants to practice German, the monthly VAT filing you were referring to is called Umsatzsteuervoranmeldung. One word.
Yes. Yeah, so the German words, yes, very bad.
Don't worry. We only have 2 more questions left. So you are a mentor and invest in AI startups. If you were to start a fund today, what would its focus be?
If I would start a startup now?
A fund, a VC fund.
Oh, a fund. I should have prepared that one. So sorry. So there were so many questions. I prepared some, but most I didn't. So anyway, so if I were to start a startup fund, what would I do? So I think what I would do is I would try to spot if I would start a startup fund now, I would use a lot of AI and I would use a lot of data. Because in a fund, you always have to justify also what you're doing. And because you're working with other people's money, currently I'm just investing my own money. So gut feeling is not so good for a startup fund. So what would I do? I would use a lot of AI. I would try to get hold of many startup stories and analyze them and see how the market shifts and changes. So which startups get good valuations at the next stages over time and how this changes. And then I would also try to identify which business angels benefit the companies. And I would try to get into startups they invested in and then or try to get them on board also if I'm investing. Because when I started my first company, if we had a business angel, would have avoided so many mistakes. It's not just because of the money, but we did so many things wrong, like not having a proper packaging for our first product, for example, which was sold also in stores and so on. So there are so many things which you can learn from an experienced business person. So I would probably take the business angels more into account than I have the impression the current startup funds do.
Mm-hmm. To close this interview, and by the way, we will ask you where all the startups can pitch you. I was wondering, startup founders often chase VC funding without considering other options. When should they not raise VC money?
Mm-hmm. So I think that people go for money because they think money is the most important part of the startup, but I think it's if you get the wrong investor in too soon, they can destroy your company because they. So I think you have to be wise in selecting the investor. So you should not take seed funding from somebody who is not helping you, but just pushing you in their direction, and you don't like this direction, or you're not convinced. Also, you shouldn't do that as a startup founder. What else? So I think you should do some part of your innovation before you go out for money. There are some people who seek money when they have just an idea. So, of course, if you have worked for as a whatever CEO or co-founder or something in a well-running company before, then you can probably get a lot of money already very early. When you worked for Google or something before, then you probably also will get some money early. If you try to get money, whatever it takes, then it takes a lot. You have to make many concessions with some people who are just investing early. They're high risk actually also, but then they will take a lot of shares from you at a low valuation. And for some founders, that's maybe not so necessary to secure this so early. But generally, people rather take up an investor too late than too early. So in FactFinder, I bootstrapped FactFinder. In 2007, 8, 9, we had over 40% growth. And while we were still 5 to 10% EBIT positive, not EBITDA, EBIT positive. So we were making real money and also cash flow positive. And we were growing over 40%, and investors were coming and asking, so can we invest? Can we put some money on the table? And I did not do it because I thought, well, 42 to 47% growth rate is already so huge. If we grow more, probably the company will do wrong or bad things because we cannot control all the growth. But I think I made a mistake. Because if I had taken some money at that time, probably we would have done the international expansion much faster and maybe much better. And in the end, so I'm not allowed to tell the exact amount we had for FactFinder, but it was, like, let's say, a middle double-digit million. And DACH, our US competitor, sold for $1 billion to Oracle. And even though the founder, Steve Papa, only had a minority share at that time, he still definitely had more than 10%, and that means he definitely made more than 100 million for that. So probably it would have been better to just do the international expansion, especially to the US, with investors' money and also maybe with some investors' guidance. So choose the investor well, but do not say, I don't need money, I don't need investors, if you actually should or do need them, to do the next step, to do the next real growth step.
Carsten, thank you very much for answering for 2 interviews, taking up 2 evenings of your vacation. Thank you very much. Greatly appreciated. Hope to have you back soon.
Thank you very much.
That's all, folks. Find more news, streams, events, and interviews at www.startuprad.io. Remember, sharing is caring.
Whether you're just starting out or scaling your security program, building trust and demonstrating strong security practices is more important than ever. Banter automates compliance for ISO 27001 SOC 2 and more, saving you time, money and effort while strengthening customer trust. Plus, with automated security questionnaires and a customer-facing trust center, you can streamline security reviews and showcase your IT infrastructure security. Over 9,000 global companies, including Atlassian, Flow Health, and Quora, already trust Banter to manage risk and prove security in real time. Get an exclusive $1,000 discount now at vanta.com/startupradio.